Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to part two of Freedom. I ended off the last video on wanting to read a part of the book that is called the Holistic Curriculum Related Reflections, which I published in the beginning of 2017. One of the amazing features of this particular book is when I had a feeling I wanted to write something, I would sit down and, as Carl Jung said, that the artist does not create by himself. He allows himself to be there, and then creativity comes through him. And I'm amazed at that. When I had a feeling I wanted to write something, I would sit down and it would just flow, and within 4 to 5 minutes it would be finished, and it was amazing. And this is part of what I would say is part of the freedom factor, where you don't have fears. You start with something and you let the energy just flow, because it comes from the inner self and it creates an enormous amount of passion inside of you, and energy and creativity that comes through you. So again, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says all good comes from us, then we have to make ourselves available for the good the moment we have an idea. Allah tells us in the Quran, when you think about something good, don't hesitate, do it, because it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will send assistance to you to make that happen. The moment you doubt, then the shaitan, in actual fact, is space for him to actually mess you around, and then you never get down to what you want to do, and you lose out on that moment, and you keep on regretting what you could have done. So the best is to, when you have an idea, you have a thought, go for it. Now I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote, which I call rather a reflection, because poem seems to have a kind of a fluffy, you know, meaning to me. One thinks about some fluffy poetry. I rather call it reflections, because reflections come from the Arabic word tafakkur, to reflect. And this is a core reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created the Quran in Arabic, so that perhaps mankind can reflect. Now, reflection is a very powerful kind of essence of life. When one reflects, you actually empty your mind and you just look at something and let the frequency of that thing resonate with you. And you will find that because you're keeping yourself totally humble, totally prepared to actually learn, you open yourself up, you find that the frequencies of that thing that you're looking at comes to you, and it gives you a deeper understanding of what its purpose is. And you get some excitement about simple things, as they say, simple things. There's no simple things in life. Everything actually is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existence. And so I'm going to read to you now from the book. And I would encourage everybody to have a book like this. It's not a book that you can complete reading. It's because you actually read and you reflect on it, and it goes deeper and deeper. Now, this particular reflection I wrote will cover practically the whole of the 30-minute previous part one talk, all in one, and just listen to what has been written. Critical skills without interconnected values. This course called awareness. I'm just going to show it to you. Called awareness, and that is awareness, raising one's consciousness to become more aware of things, and then one's consciousness raises to different levels of appreciation. Critical skills without interconnected values is like isolating ingredients but missing the meal. Duality without complementary necessity is like a mother and father forgetting their parenthood. What I'm trying to get to in that stanza is basically, when you analyze things too much, and you break things up into parts, you seem to lose the holistic integration and the value of things. Science and maths, as separate subjects, deny their interdependent processes. Multiplicity is unity, and unity creates multiplicity. Now, that concept of multiplicity is unity, that I actually learned from the art in Islam, because the artwork has got this multiplicity in small units that creates a larger particular beauty. And it's actually on the cover of this particular book. You can see there's a multiplicity of and simplicity of design, But because it reflects and it actually is a combination, it has a bigger whole and it has a major effect on the mind and the appreciation factor when you look at the art in Islam. And this that concept of multiplicity is unity and unity is multiplicity. That basically comes from the knowledge that I acquired through studying the art in Islam and symbolism. So yeah, let me get back to the poetry or to the reflection. Multiplicity is unity and unity creates multiplicity. This awareness builds communities through individual consciousness of divine connection. So yeah, I'm explaining that when you have a consciousness that's connected to the divine, your individual consciousness allows you to see the greater picture, and that awareness builds you into a community and builds the community. Through individual consciousness of divine connection, who grants personal growth and social benefit. Schools have longed to individualize. You must remember the schooling system is based on capitalism, based on the colonial model. And because if you want to make a successful capitalist, you first have to make sure that you can make him believe that the individual is important. He is important. That personality that can't exist without anybody else. If you make a person believe that to be a good individual, he will actually destroy anything else and he will just try to be himself without really connecting with anyone else. Schools have longed to individualize, to create competitive animals, for cutthroat profit drivers to serve rich manipulators. And this basically it's possible if you do have an education that creates people to become individuals. Something that I actually saw when I was at the university one day. There was a section called the short loan, where you take out a book for an hour or two, where the lecturers actually told you that you must reference these books, but there's not a lot of these books available, so you have to take it out for an hour, bring it back so that the other students can also research the same book. I found a very fascinating thing, which actually made me cringe and think how selfish people can become. I found people hiding the book that is on short loan inside that short loan library so that they can come back and actually use the book over and over, not allowing it to be used by anybody else. Now that was the worst of kind of competitiveness that I saw at the university. And that made me really think about, how can people be so selfish, But because the system allows that and actually drives that individualism, this is the kind of behavior you get. So I'm going to read it again. Schools have longed to individualize, to create competitive animals, for cutthroat profit drivers to serve rich manipulators. The market crash in 2008 and 2009, with the crash of the home loans, etc. in America. The market crash in 2008 and 2009 demolished "it is all mine," ushers in the need for the divine, because people started praying more. Charity came to save the chaotic economic waves. Banks and rich people, actually bailed out the banks because the banks were not surviving in order to keep that economy going. So the charity actually came to save the chaotic economic waves. And after that point, they basically said, no, we need a new economic model now because the old economic model didn't work. And we need to get new thinking, new theories, etc. I think one particular writer in the Economist, in actual fact, made a good point. He said people blame the CEOs, etc. What they don't realize is that the education systems have developed this kind of people to actually do this kind of thing, manipulate and undermine, etc. And that kind of mentality that happens through this kind of capitalistic, Western, individualistic kind of education. Now, research now proves divine order. People with the new technology that they have and the new probes that they have in space, they see that the universe it's intelligent. It's not just a chaotic kind of stuff. There's some intelligence behind that. So research now proves divine order, submission, attains permission. So now one actually realizes that when you start submitting to the reality of the creator and the creation, then you see a new permission that you actually get into looking at things, and you open up a new awareness. And it refutes, refuting evolution. And now you have to re-question that kind of evolutionary factor of Darwin and things like that. And establish a new ever-present revolution, all for one and one for all. And that obviously relates to the creator. Now the last stanza is, the prophets be blessed, who long taught how to assess the value of true success. And they were humble, and they were hardworking, and they were trustworthy, and they worked hard with people that didn't want to believe. Many people didn't want to believe. Some of them suffered, some of them were killed, but they still actually loved the people and still did what they had to do and still invited people to the true path of success and freedom. So I'm going to read it again so that you can actually fact just get the flow of it, because I tried to put some of the meanings in between of what I meant by writing it. Awareness. Critical skills without interconnected values is like isolating ingredients but missing the meal. Duality without complementary necessity is like a mother and father forgetting their parenthood. Science and maths as separate subjects deny their interdependent processes. Multiplicity is unity, and unity creates multiplicity. This awareness builds communities through individual consciousness of divine connection, who grants personal growth and social benefit. Schools have longed to individualize, to create competitive animals for cutthroat profit drivers to serve rich manipulators. The market crash in 2008 to 2009 demolished "it is all mine," ushers in the need for the divine. Charity came to save the chaotic economic waves. Research now proves divine order, submission attains permission, refuting evolution, and establishing the ever-present revolution, all for one and one for all. The prophets be blessed, who long taught how to assess the value of true success. And that reflection basically covers the whole 30 minutes of the previous lecture that I had. Now, one wants to know why, if people even go to these high-priced, self-empowered workshops and talks, after, say, 1 or 2 days, they just crash again into the same kind of doldrum that they were. But one of the features that is a common thing is because even though people go into these particular self-empowerment, they still basically accept the infrastructures and the systems that exist, such as the loans that they have, the debt that they've got, the trying to live up with the Joneses, the systems that talks about accredited qualifications, and if I don't have the money, I can't study further. You know, the need to believe that this particular type of course will give me a job, or this degree will give me a job. Those kind of beliefs are all the structural features that allows people to lose their feeling of true freedom. They still are attached, even though they are trying to break out of this kind of dependency on man-made systems. They tend to fall back into it. When they go into a workshop, they feel energized, and after 2 or 3 hours, or even a day, they just lose it all again, and they have to go to another particular lecture to try and whoop them up again. But they come back into the same system. I remember one day my father-in-law said to me they were having a braai, and he had his friends there, very important people, etc. And I asked him, "How's it going outside, Dad?" And he said, "We are just solving the problems of the world in a discussion around the fire. Tomorrow we're going back to work." And that was, to me, an excellent way of analyzing how we try to solve things, etc., but we still basically go back into that system, and we become dependent on that system. And there are ways in which one can, in actual fact, use the system, or go into the system, get the knowledge of the system, and then in actual fact come out and do something about it. I remember when I was at college, I went to teachers college when I was like 7 years older than the others, because I didn't decide from the beginning to become a teacher. I worked in the industry as an accounts clerk for 7 years, and I mean for 3 years, and I had 7 jobs in 3 years. And then one day my ex-principal said we need an accounting teacher. I went to go and teach, and I stayed in teaching for 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 3 years, one particular post, and that was an indication to my wife to say to me, suggest to me, why don't you qualify as a teacher? It seems that your love is there for teaching, and then I will work. And I was so fortunate. May Allah grant all the barakah of that. Um, so yes, so when I was at college, I realized, but these people are teaching outdated methodologies. Some of the videos and the films that we were seeing was like from 1945, and I was like totally disheartened by the courses that we were offering at the college for teachers to qualify them as teachers. And then I used to ask questions, obviously, in lecture rooms. And after a while, one of my lecturers, he was my history lecturer. He asked me if I can speak to me one day before the lecture started, and he said to me, "I can see you can see right through the smoke screen. Can I give you some advice? Just keep quiet and complete it. And after you complete the course, and then you can do the work that you would like to do, because now you understand how the system works." I just kept quiet and I continued. I took his advice and I finished off the 3 years that I had to finish off. So yes, those are personal experiences that I had, and you need sometimes to get in to know how people work and how people think in order to be able to assist. And that's why I actually, when I decided I would like to study Arabic at university, I thought to myself, if I study Arabic, I'll be able to help people and guide people, but I need to know also how the economy works. So I'm going to try and do two things. I'm going to try and major in economics and major in Arabic at the same time, because if I know how a capitalist works, I can in actual fact guide people better in terms of how not to fall for the tricks. So this is where I am today, alhamdulillah. I'm very grateful I can share these things with you, and I hope inshallah people will take it on, not only from the Muslims but non-Muslims as well, Christians, Jewish. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the believers in God and the year after, the Jews and the Christians and the Shabi'in and the Muslims. Allah says, come together on the things that you agree on. You will believe in me in the last day, and stand together against the kuffar, the people who want to break down every single good thing that there is. And Allah encourages us in the Quran, I will tell you on the day of judgment why I've made you different. But stand together if you believe in me, and I will reward you, inshallah. So that is a very important point. Even in the jihad, there were some people in the jihad who were Christians and the Jews that actually were very sincere. They followed their Prophet in sincerity, and they, in actual fact, fought in the jihad in the defense of the deen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises them that Allah is going to reward them. And in the Quran, you find that the ayahs where Allah Ta'ala speaks about the people of the book who are so sincere, and they make dua, and they make sujood for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the middle of the night. And they do not sell their belief in the one God for anything else. And these are, although Allah says in the Quran, illa qalilan, there are only a few of them. So therefore we can't just blanketly judge people because their name is John or whatever the case might be. We must believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided us, and there are people amongst the Christians and the Jews that are very sincere, and we need to find ourselves where we unite and we work together and try and help those who are not believing, even though we know some of them will never believe, but it's our job still to help. We are the people who believe, and Allah has given us that particular title to be the people of the middle road who will actually go out there and assist people and remind them and try to, perhaps if one or two people in actual fact turn around, inshallah, we get the reward of a nation or of the world that have become Muslim. So it's our duty to actually invite people towards goodness. In actual fact, it brings me to an ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns people that some of you in the community must stand up and become good people and establish the good. Because if nobody does that and everybody depends on the status quo of what exists, Allah promises that Allah will destroy that community, and the community will find no help whatsoever. They will be absolutely isolated because no group caught up and tried to actually establish the good in that community. So we must believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will assist, even if it's a few. We tend to have this kind of concept that we must have this unity of masses and they are going to make the changes. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. If you look at the Quran carefully, you'll find Allah ta'ala will remind us how many times did a small group of people not overpower a large group of people, because Allah becomes the assistance of these people. And it's common in the Quran, and even if you look at the prophets, there's only one person that Allah sent, and then the changes happen. So it's about the belief, and Allah provides the support, unseen support. We won't even know, we won't even be able to see them. And you remember when Nabi Muhammad left Makkah, he left. Allah makes it known to people that Nabi Muhammad actually had one friend that went with him, only one friend that left with him to Medina on the Hijrah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that when Sayyidina Abu Bakr had the fear, Nabi Muhammad said to him, don't fear, Allah is with us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him against the kuffar. So it's all about having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be your assistant, to be absolutely secure, and then the fears go away. Now, when fears go away, that is freedom. Real freedom is when we lose all our fears of losses. And then, true believers, they don't even fear death. In actual fact, in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala speaks about the people who fought to defend the deen and died in the wars. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala don't say, the understanding is, don't say that they are dead, because they are alive. And some of them, Allah explains that when they see the reward that they received, they're too eager to come back again and do it all over again. Now that is the hard part. The enemy of belief, if he is extremely fearful. The Quran explains it, extremely fearful of a believer, because he knows that the believer is being supported. He knows that the believer has got the strength that he fights or he does something. Whether he passes away or whether he doesn't pass away, he still benefits greatly. And so it's difficult to fight a person who wants to die, or a person who's fearless of death. He knows his Creator is with him all the time. So this is the kind of thing, if you have that kind of person, then obviously you know that Shaitan and people who want to manipulate the resources of the world, they fear these kind of people. And because they feel these people are going to remove their resources from them. So they will have plans, etc., to try and make religion look like it's a stupid thing. That's an imagination, etc., etc. I mean, if you go into imagination, that's another level. But the fact is, they will try and do things which is not try to discredit faith, because faith is on another level. It actually creates free people, and what other people try to do is to make people connect through debt, connect through support, sponsorship, all of that. And you feel, I can't do this because there's no sponsors. I can't do this. Nobody wants to support it. The fact is, if it's something good, do it. You will get the benefit of it in this world and in the life hereafter. But we must believe that. If we don't believe it, we're not going to be able to move. So, be that as it may, understanding the concept of education and why it doesn't succeed, as it hasn't succeeded. It's actually, the World Bank has just released a report on the 26th of September 2017, where they say the learning culture has not succeeded. It is in a crisis. They're calling for new policies, they're calling for new ideas, new paradigms, etc., for education, because it is not working. Unfortunately, in many ways, they don't understand why it's not working, because they're in it. They don't see the skills that they've developed, this critical thinking of breaking everything into pieces and not knowing, and specializing in different features and not knowing the connection between it. That makes it difficult for them to see the holistic picture. So one of the core features in education that breaks the flow of education is actually periods. Now, we use periods and we think periods are like the thing, but I mean, it actually breaks it. Now, I've got this on my sweater right here with me. I painted it on my sweater. School periods break the flow of learning. And then I've got this ball, this metal ball at the bottom, which basically shows that it actually traps you. How did I discover that? When I started teaching, I realized the moment I actually get the children to understand, the bell rings. Then it takes me 2 to 3 months to to get back to where I was in order to get the children to understand the integration of things. And then the child has to put away his books, take out his books for the next teacher who's got his own personality, different to mine, and the child has to adjust and all that. It's very difficult for children to get a flow of things because you have to be broken by bell ringing, etc. And then I sat back and I started summarizing these things, and I realized I could actually summarize the whole years of the work in actually one page. And that's when it started. I realized that we're actually wasting time by breaking the periods up, the content up into so many periods and subsections and quarters, etc. And then we lose, then we don't know why didn't the children understand, at the end of the year, did I teach? Of course it won't work because you've broken it up in too many pieces and it's spreading off for too long a period and the kids will never be able to understand it. So that is one aspect of which is core in our education, that we even adapt that to Islamic education. People open up Islamic schools also with periods, also breaking the subject of the Quran up into pieces. You have fiqh, and you have tawheed, and you have history, and you have the seerah, etc., the history of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have the hadith separately, and even people become like scholars in hadith, and not hafiz al-Quran, not knowing anything about Arabic, not knowing this, and obviously you have this kind of breaking of the and Allah Ta'ala questions in the Quran. Allah's going to question those who break the Quran into pieces. Now there's something that you must think about. One has to stick with the Quran in its entirety, and you must know that Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is actually the embodiment of the character of the Quran. So if you study the Quran, you actually study the character of Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as is Aisha stated in a narrated hadith. So the Quran brings everything together. In one ayah, you see many things. And that allows you to actually see the holistic and integrated feature. And that's where I found the idea of holistic education, or was granted the insight or the awareness of it. And that it actually falls into one. And how did I do that? I was researching all the different educational models that you can find in the world, Montessori, Steiner, the UN's method, etc. I found like there's something wrong with this. I didn't know what it is, but there's something wrong with it. And I thought I can't use the best of it all and bring it together for a new methodology or a new way of thinking. There must be something else. But there was this ayah in my mind that always Allah says, in this book of the Quran, there is understanding of it. There is a remedy for all ills, and I realized that education is an ill. We need to be able to do something about this. And I kept it in my back of my mind, not in my frontal feature of my main idea, but it's always around me. And then one day I came home from school and I put my key into the door. And as I turned the key, and it's so symbolic in this, it's like opening a new door. The whole idea of holistic leisure learning came to me. Nature, people, languages, trade, calculation, construction, microscopic and telescopic. Those are the 7 activity areas and not learning areas. And they all link because people are part of nature. Language is part of people. Trade is another form of language. Calculation is necessary for trade. The result of calculation is construction, and everything in the universe and in the earth is constructed, and all of those 7 activities are actually related to Quranic ayat. And that was the beauty of it. So you can take any particular curriculum and you can slide it through there and you can connect them all, and people can see the value of every subject. And that is where learning and education, if you want to save learning as a culture, we need to be able to bring value back. And this is what I'm trying to do and keep in holistic curriculum related reflections, is to bring that kind of value back of learning and make people feel good about all subjects and not have this competitive nature when you sit in staff rooms. Some teachers, math teachers, they think they are better than the people who do PT, physical education, and you have this kind of comments that are being made, in the competitive world of teachers. Sometimes I was so upset with the staff in terms of what they talk about. I wouldn't sit with them. I would sit with the caretakers, because they try to talk such nonsense and try to compete with one another on simple things, and they even poison your mind in terms of certain children they talk about in the staff room. You never had a problem with a child, and afterwards you actually, they've spoken about this child in the staff room, and then now you go to the class and you actually, somehow you tend to focus on this child now. And I decided, no, 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 no. I can't sit amongst people that talk like that. And that is what made me, when I had my own children, say to myself, am I going to let my children go through that particular education? And so I decided to teach my children at home and do homeschooling. And it was a major decision that I made with the assistance and the support of my wife. Alhamdulillah, we started teaching our own children at home. And we today, alhamdulillah, after all those years, we do not, we are, we are not in any way disappointed about that decision. We made the decision. We made the sacrifices, if one can call it sacrifices, and we saw absolute miracles in terms of the way Allah Subhanahu wa Taala made a small amount of money be wide in every particular sense. And that was a marvelous kind of decision, and I hope I can actually share it with you sometime. And that's what we call freedom. I broke away from the Department of Education. I resigned, and I started my own teaching my own children at home. And community members came along and said, "Can't you teach my children too?" And that's how I started the school, from a home-based education. And I remember I had this boy who came as a Afrikaner, who came as a health inspector to the house to give a health certificate to my school that I want to run. And he said to me, he was so impressed. He says he's never seen something so connected to faith and to the Creator. And he says, take it one place at a time, and I will be there for you to support you and clear the area give you the necessary certificates. So you can see there are people in various walks of life, and Christians and Jews, etc., that are very supportive. I had a Hindu inspector who saw the work that I did. He was so fascinated by it, and he also said that full support. But you have your enemies as well. I mean, if you don't have enemies, then you something wrong. You must have enemies. If you're doing something good, and you're trying to do something good, you will have your enemies. But you must be prepared to actually not take them as enemies, but as people who you can work with and challenge in a good way, and maybe hopefully call them onto your side through the goodness, and maybe they will become also good people, inshallah. So, because remember, they still have the ruh inside of them. The Spirit of God is blown into each one of us that makes us alive. And that respect that we would have for that ruh, that Spirit of God that's inside of each one of us, that should in actual fact make us better people, makes us relax more, makes us not feel so threatened by everything, because we can identify, we have a similar life than anybody else. And unfortunately, this kind of competitive educational models that we have, how many A's I can get and I can beat somebody else, it all rubs off on people's personality. So we'll take it in our next video, inshallah, where we take the actual model of education, show you the inside of the book, etc., and how it actually formulates itself. I hope you enjoyed this part 2. Thank you very much. Shukran.